You mentioned lifestyle factors a lot, and you kind of listed them out a decent amount earlier, and you talk about the importance of strength training and sleep and stress management. If you had to name like a top three lifestyle factors that have the biggest impact on hormone levels, what would be like number one that says the most impact, number two, and number three?
Sleep would be number one
Mm.
for sure. Sleep is where all rest, repair, everything takes place. That would be my number one for sure. Number two would be exercise. So, zone two, VO2 max. And you have to remember, for some people, zone two could be a walk outside. For some people, it's rucking. And for some people, it's cycling. It doesn't always have to be running. Um, and then three would be nutrition.
Let's say somebody hears that and they are having hormonal issues, and so they're like, okay, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make sure I dial in my sleep. I'm gonna make sure I get at least 7 hours, if not 8 hours a night. I'm gonna make sure I exercise regularly, and I'm sure like a mix of maybe some higher intensity for the VO2 max, some zone 2 stuff, some resistance training, like adding in a good mix of that. And then they start to fine tune their nutrition a little bit so that they can, if they have any insulin resistance or metabolic syndrome, then they can start to work towards that. They're hitting protein goals, they're eating whole foods and stuff like that. Like how long do you allow somebody to like be consistent with the lifestyle factors until you look at it again? It's like nothing has changed. We need to go to like hormone replacement therapy, or we need to like work on something else. Like how long until we need to take a little bit more drastic measures, or maybe more like medical treatment?
Yeah, pharmaceutical intervention, usually 6 months. I give everyone 6 months. I always say, test and not guess. So for instance, it's not uncommon. I see someone, it's the first time they've ever had blood work done, and everything is like in the red, it's like, it looks a little scary. I'm like, okay, like this is the starting point. And, exactly like you said, we're going to dial all this in, do nothing else. Don't buy 1,000 supplements or a bunch of programs or like, you know, jump into like whatever, hard 75 hard or whatever it is. Like, let's just move the big rocks because, the famous saying is without commitment, you never start. And without consistency, you never finish, right? My patients am really big on like, what can you do forever? And not that like you have to follow the same program forever, you can periodize it, but like, what are the things you enjoy in this health span? And let's capitalize on that and double down on those big rocks. We'll retest in 6 months. If you still have metabolic derangement, then I'm like, okay, or you're still symptomatic, whatever it is, let's add in whatever it is, pharmaceutical intervention wise, whether it's prescription grade hormones or peptides or, GLP-1 agonists, whatever the treatment is.
Let's say somebody is struggling. I think that one of the things that also is known is like maybe sometimes like too much exercise. Like you said, if you do like a marathon, that might be the worst thing you can do for your
Worst
hormones.
thing for
Like,
your hormones, and don't test them. Whatever you do, don't
yeah.
look. That's the worst time. I'll get a lot of people who do that. I'm like, why? No.
If somebody is trying to figure out, like they do love exercise and they're trying to figure out what is kind of like the optimal dosage for me and what's kind of the right balance of all these things, resistance training, high intensity, zone two, like how would you recommend somebody goes about like being curious with discovering what the optimal regimen is for them and their hormone levels?
Yeah, I mean, if you're mobile and you have a base, right? If let's we use like in running a lot, do you have a base? If you have a base of fitness and you're like, I want to see what I can do, that's where I think a periodized approach where you need to choose your goals. So I want to see what I can do for the 5 big lifts. Then you need to put all your chips in. You shouldn't be trying to like PR in the next 90 days. I always think in medicine, we do a lot. I don't know why. We think of a lot of things in a 3 month increment. I don't know where that started, but we do. So I always think of 90 days. So I'm going to spend 12 weeks focusing on my 5 lifts. Like, you need your hamstrings to be loose to do that. You need your quads to be recovered. So you probably won't be running. Now you can still do some swimming or whatever it is, some rucking for cardiovascular health, which can also help. Um, and then, then you move out of that phase. And then I want to focus on improving my 1 mile time or improving my endurance, whatever it is. So I think that it's always good to have a periodized approach. This is where, I mean, a lot of people come in and they're like, I want to lose fat and build muscle. And I always say, we got to pick one. Like those two things are, unless you're a newbie and you're coming off the couch and you've done nothing for the last 35 years, maybe. But those are conflicting goals. It's like I have a lot of physique athletes I work with, and I'll get occasionally a female who's like, I want to get my pro physique card, which means they get very, very lean, but I want to also keep my period. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. Like, we got to pick one. Either you want to be shredded on stage or you want to be hormonally healthy, but that's not a thing. And anyone who tells you it is just selling you snake oil. Yeah. So my biggest thing is like, let's really focus, let's dial in, and then we can always, transition our focus or move it. It's like an on season and off season, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that. I think focusing on different goals and having a periodized approach is important for so many different reasons, both like to keep you interested and like learning new things. And then also obviously, like you said, from a hormonal perspective, what is your, if somebody, I feel like sleep is people are continually learning more about the importance of it, but that doesn't necessarily always make it that much easier to do.